that means for us and kind of our kind of the near community for its evolution and growth. So I'm going to bring her on. Oh, and then we have Mansa Keda for technical analysis after. And just a reminder, none of this is financial advice. This is just our good old community show. So I'm going to bring on Rebecca. And yes, without further ado, welcome, Rebecca.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I was actually told I was supposed to play a song for you when you came on, but I don't know how to do that on here, so there's
That's
not going to be a
okay.
song. Yeah, sorry, guys.
Just to clarify, everyone, I did not request that a song be played on. I think that would be such a move if you're a guest, be like, please have my intro music be as follows. But no, a member of the team recommended it, which was so funny and cute. But it could be just a little inside thing. If you're interested in knowing what the song was, ask us on Twitter and we'll tweet it to you later or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the discussion today is actually been really good because the role of these foundations in these smart contract ecosystems is not often well understood as a resource batch, as a support batch, as a kind of like structure component if you're an entrepreneur or person in the ecosystem. So why don't we start by, if you could just give a little introduction about you and your role, and then we can talk about what exactly the Near Foundation is and why it matters for people in the community.
Sure. So my new title is actually lead of the info team, which is a sub team under
not
community.
Head of people.
Not
Sorry,
people.
Yeah.
No, that is a whole other team led by Ken Boggs, who's doing really awesome work at developing the people behind the foundation and creating. It's like HR, but more inclusive, more cooler is my understanding, basically. And so the info team, well, maybe taking a step back. So with the Near Foundation in general and how it's been structured, much like the infrastructure of the protocol itself, is to build systems and build supports so that when we fully decentralize in 5 years and the Near Foundation ceases to exist, that the ecosystem and all the various community groups and projects within it would be able to exist without us. So we're actively working every day toward decentralization and toward basically working ourselves out of our own jobs as they currently exist now. And my job as it exists now on the community side is part of this sub team that's new as of a couple of months ago, and it's called the info team. And we're incredibly focused on ensuring information access and empowering knowledge building throughout the community. So think about tools and platforms like the Near Wiki, like the governance forum, any sort of processes or funnels or pipelines, getting more devs into the ecosystem, internal processes, even just within the team. We're thinking a lot about different legality implications, talking about DAOs always. So that's kind of where my role is at the moment, and sort of fitting into how the Near Foundation operates generally, and my perception of it over the past 6 months since I've been working for the foundation on the community side and just working within crypto in general. I'm like a teenager, kind of like a baby, very, very new to this. But the role the foundation seems to continue to play really is that support element and trying to introduce and welcome anyone who enters the Near ecosystem and help guide them to whatever it is that they would like to accomplish, however they want to succeed, and whatever success looks like for them. Whether or not this is a model that should exist for every protocol or for every chain kind of remains to be seen, but it is something where having, for legal tax reasons, depending on where your jurisdiction is, having that foundation arm separate from like your Inc. or incorporated arm does allow for different flexibility, different reasoning. I'd have to bring on a legal professional to go into it in more detail, but that's my understanding of it.
Nice. Yeah, and so in light of what you're talking about, and that was news for me that Near Foundation wouldn't exist in 5 years, but it does make sense in light of, so Elia published this article yesterday, right? Growing Near's ecosystem with decentralization. And he kind of just breaks down and talks about his time at Google, but then more importantly, kind of what the goal is within the Near ecosystem. and the different spin-offs that are happening with Aurora, with Satori, with Proximity. I would highly recommend anyone interested in this in the future development of Near to have a look at this, because it's just a good overview, I think, of where things are. So I'll link it in the chat box as well.
Yeah, good call.
Cool. Okay, so in terms of the actual parameters of what the Near Foundation does, we know that there is a certain amount of tokens that are minted every year for block rewards, tokens minted for ecosystem development. What does the Near Foundation do on a big level? What's the goal of the Near Foundation when you guys put your heads together and you're like, okay, we're going to do our work? Like, obviously you're going to decentralize, but what's the kind of long-term mission that you guys are working to try to achieve?
Well, to try and sum it up, it's everyone's success. Like anyone who is a Near holder, a Near builder, invested in the future of what Near is and what it could be. And that's why it's both really, it seems very general, and it could be rather fixed, but it's also rather fluid because that changes based on the external environment, not only within the crypto blockchain space, but even what's happening, in standard industries, traditional industries, and day-to-day life apart from that. But when we have like our little team meetings, our little huddles, the question always becomes, first and foremost, especially on the community side, because Near Foundation is so community focused and oriented, it's then saying, okay, well, what does the community want? What are we hearing from people that they need to see, and the kind of information, especially info team, that they're hoping to have access to? And so this is where we heavily rely upon feedback generated through surveys, generated through posts on the forum, Telegram chats, Twitter, what have you. There's this constant need to be on alert for things that are going well and people are really happy with, or things that are not going very well and that there needs to be greater attention to. So it's a bit ephemeral. It's a little harder to define because it's how individuals and how community groups are perceiving their own success and their own interests. And then, of course, that can always change depending on what's new, what's launching, what's just becoming known. So yeah, these conversations end up being like part of the day-to-day in a really strong way of what are people interested in knowing more about? What do they need access to? And where can we best support as a team and as a foundation?
No, that's really cool. And I think it makes sense for how this has evolved. Who is in the quote unquote community team at this point? I guess how big is the community team? You don't have to go in and dox everybody if some people are it or not. But just in terms of like, is it growing? How fast has it grown? When did you join the community team? Where's that at?
There's this constant feeling of moving forward and developing and growing. But it seems that we've maybe settled a little bit, especially after NearCon. We all needed like a little bit of a breather. At the moment, I think we're 8 people. And so that's when you think about 100+ guilds and endless number of projects, like that's a fairly small size of team. And when I joined in May, how many people? We were technically a hybrid team at that point with marketing. So it was like marketing and community. And since there's been a new head of branding and communications hired just like a few weeks ago, and the marketing team was able to restructure and reorganize under their own umbrella. And so community now gets to hang out, just the 8 of us for now. And how we develop from there is going to be very interesting to see as we move into 2022 and Q1, because right now the focus is on, okay, how are we wrapping up the year? What, onboarding is a really huge and high priority item for us at the moment. So it's like, how can we make everyone's entry point into the ecosystem and into the community that much smoother, so we're not losing anyone? And that's like a really big thing at the moment that we're trying to like round out the calendar year with, so that as we move into 2022, we kind of come at things with a better understanding of the overall picture of how people are entering the ecosystem and what they're looking for and how we can better help them.
It's kind of interesting because I don't think there's really very many jobs exactly like this in the world, right? I mean, you're basically building a community for an open source ecosystem. and then eventually you guys will become part of this open source ecosystem as well yourself,
Yeah.
right? So maybe if you could talk about what were your first impressions entering the crypto space. Where did you come from prior to it? Kind of what was your interest in getting into this space at the beginning? And yeah, like a little bit on your background.
Sure. So this is a line that I stand by. I came into this space at a time when I had, the pandemic was seemingly winding down a little. Like we were just getting out of our most recent lockdown in the Greater Toronto area, and it was following a degree. Like I just finished was just wrapping up my MBA. I'd been stuck at home for like a year and a half and was trying to figure out next steps. And I had done an MBA with a specialization in arts, media, and entertainment management. And events weren't happening. Arts and culture venues were still closed. And so I was thinking to myself, geez, all right, I went to school to like level up within that previous industry of arts and culture and events in particular. And none of that's happening. And I'm going to graduate with a lot of debt and a rather expensive degree and not a really clear idea of what I can do from here. And this is where my really good friend, Chloe, also known as Chloe the Dev, said, hey, there are job openings at NEAR and they're looking for someone who's organized. I think you should apply. So yeah, okay, organized. I think, I can do that. That's every part of like community building. There's a key part of like admin or organization that needs to go into it, as I'm sure all the guild leaders know. And that sort of like management of activity, of events, of resources was something that I'd been involved in, whether I was working for festivals or I was working for an arts council or just like school generally and all the different activities I was pursuing there. So I thought, okay, I'll give this a try. And Chloe being such an advocate for this space, I've been hearing bits and pieces about NEAR for a few months before that. I had gotten set up with my own like NEAR name that was gifted to me. And I was like, okay, well, let's see what's going on. And my first impressions were really just of abundance, of excitement, of energy, of opportunity, and feeling just kind of overwhelmed because there was so much going on and trying to make sense of it. Your brain hurts after a while. And I'm sure even if you've been in the space for a while, I don't know, Ozzy, if your brain still hurts as you're trying to go through what should be talked about in these podcasts even. But it's something I'm still trying to figure out how to process, I guess, better or more efficiently. But that was the first impression, even just as I was considering applying, interviewing, and then getting the role. Was I'm like, okay, wow, all right. How does any one person who's like totally new to this space get oriented or get any measure of understanding as to where they can even start? Because many people might come in as I did, which is like there's a personal referral. There's someone who's saying there's this particular opportunity or there's this particular space that would be such a good fit for you. Come check it out. But if you're just curious generally, you're like, yeah, what's that NEAR about? And you just sort of drop into it. I imagine it could be rather overwhelming. So that's been kind of a guiding principle for me, at least for the past 6 months, and will continue to be so, is as we try and strive for mass adoption, as you try and look to Web 2 and say, okay, everyone, this is where it's at. Come join us. Finding ways to make that as smooth and seamless as possible so you don't lose people along the way, or so that you don't form negative impressions. I think that's one of the worst things that could possibly happen is if someone is entering the space and their needs aren't being met, they're not able to find information, whatever the problem is, and then they just leave with a bad taste in their mouth and you've ruined like Web3 for them for the next period of time, right? So that was my lengthier way of answering those questions. But yeah, it's been a time of getting to know things and still feeling like there's always stuff to know. But that's what makes it so exciting too. It's ever changing.
Yeah. So I have here about, there are a couple of projects within the ecosystem that I think that you participate with or involve yourself with. Just mentioning that the tip of the list is the Creatives DAO, the Open Web Sandbox, and the Marma J Foundation. Do you want to kind of talk about each one and what each is, what opportunities are available, and how you see these projects as kind of catalysts for the community development that you guys are working in?
For sure. Given my background in arts and culture and more creatives areas, ended up helping to form the Creatives DAO, which is its own DAO vertical. Think of it as kind of the DAO of DAOs. It's meant to support smaller DAOs and guilds beneath it, and therefore individual artists and creators coming into the ecosystem with an idea, with a vision, with a project, with a desire to create and use blockchain. So on that, I'm now in an advisory role with that entity. But right now, it is actually, I'm very proud to say, like the first larger scale DAO in that way, where it's entirely community run, and there's no presence of Near Foundation or even Near Inc. employees on that council. And that is what we're actively working toward, is building up these structures, this general infrastructure, and then handing it over to the community and saying, okay, all right, we've created a bit of a template here. Go decide how you want it to pan out and how it can work for you. And so that entity being the main source of not only like welcome and onboarding, but also support for any prospective or current creative leader in the community is something that I'm so proud of. And I just get to say, oh yeah, okay, I was there for a bit, helped, and look at them go. So it's something where if you check out on the governance forum under the creatives category, any of those groups that are listed there interact with the Creatives DAO in some capacity, because that's most often the case where they're getting their funding to be able to support their communities and their activities.
And how has it seen it? How has the Creatives DAO grown, or at least what's the interesting kind of people you've seen pass through it in the
Sure.
past couple of months? Is it mainly artists? Is it musicians? Like what's the type, I guess, that's getting sucked into this?
Yeah, so like musicians like NXM or the Near Music Guild for sure. And then also groups that are maybe supporting specific NFT marketplaces. For instance, Mintbase helped set up the Create Base Guild, the OG, the first. That's now actually going to be changing its name, I believe, to Mintbase DAO in order to further clarify that tight connection with that developing and really awesome NFT marketplace. But then there's also groups that are incredibly like invested in the local creator communities or creative communities. So, for instance, there's this one group called The Clan that's based in Brazil. There's Incubadora that's based in generally supporting Portuguese speaking artists, whether they're based in Portugal itself or elsewhere. Muti DAO, even smaller, but again, focused on musicians and really also supporting the very practical aspects of craft. Because it's one thing to say, okay, you know, here's this currency that you can use, but how's that going to help them get guitar strings? So it's really helping to bridge the connectivity between what's happening on the blockchain to what can happen in your day-to-day life in a very tactile fashion. And so over the past almost 6 months, 5 months, the number of like DAOs and guilds that have been incubated through the Creatives DAO went from, I think it was something like 10 to begin with, and we're now over 20. So it's just also setting up viable and sustainable infrastructure for these groups so that they can set up their own bounties, so that they can be setting up like really great practices for community calls and community engagement opportunities, so that it's artists, it's supporting their artist work, it's supporting access to whatever is needed for their craft, whether it's studio time and studio space, or it's the ability to be able to pay for paint, or it's also for the instance of a group like Cura DAO, trying to figure out experimental and awesome ways to do creative coding and like generative art. So it's traditional mediums and forms of art, but then it's also trying to experiment and play with like what's new and connecting with different people.
It's kind of funny, I think, because you always sometimes you hear things like, you know, when PayPal started, they had to, you know, give away like, you know, $50,000 of free money to get their payment system off the ground. And they had to like, you know, do all this, like, you know, bend over backwards stuff to jumpstart their system. When Airbnb started, they had to, allow people to stay in these places for free to show people that the system works, and yada, yada, yada. And
Yeah.
I feel a similar thing to how you're describing kind of the onboarding of these creatives today, where it's kind of like in 10, 12, 15 years. Actually, let me just pull up this tweet because I think it's a good overview of the point that we're driving in here. So I gotta find it.
Yeah,
There it
and
is.
while that's coming up, it's trying to make everything feel more real, because I think there's that real distance when you're not dealing with cryptocurrency or blockchain on a regular basis. It feels fantastical. It doesn't feel like something that you can actually tangibly interact with. So yeah, there's a little bit of seeding going on here in order to help people to see the potential. But yeah, back to the tweet here.
No, exactly. I mean, and I like to always just drive this in, like, this is where we are in terms
Cool.
of the development of NFTs alone, right? But you notice like culture is coming up, brands is coming up, metaverse is coming up, and they will stack, right? So the collectibles will become art and collectibles will merge. Brands will harness both collectibles and art and do their own thing. Culture will obviously build upon this, but have their own thing, and then the metaverse will kind of incorporate lots of the above. So, from the way you're talking about it, it's like, yeah, like this is literally like the Airbnb, PayPal trials of the, early 2010s and late 1990s. That's going to try to, jumpstart this ecosystem at scale and hopefully, create an entirely new process for the creator economy and for these people to generate value and followers. So that's kind of cool. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's kind of cool to know that you're in quite early on, almost early on, to the point where most people don't understand what's going on. But, the work is valuable and the system is going to pay off as time goes on,
Yeah. I also really like how on that image, I don't know if people caught it, but at the bottom it said that society and culture needs to be impacted first before the economy can be, something along those lines. And so that's true, because we need to change mindsets and mentalities, broaden minds, and open them up to the possibility. The latest really awesome part of the Near Foundation rebranding that was handled by Jake and under marketing there was, reimagining the world. That's what Near is trying to do. And through creatives in particular, like that's how you touch public consciousness, is through art, through culture. And so seeing it that way is it's collectible, like you're seeing it as something, or in the case of NFTs, or even people who are, looking at collecting various fungible tokens. Like, yes, I'm a holder, I'm showing my loyalty in this way. Then moving it to say, oh, but then you're using it into depictions of art, like you're looking at the quality of it perhaps, and looking at the meaning and the replications of it, and then moving into how those become mainstays of culture. That's great. Everyone, look into that tweet a bit more.
It's a cool place to be. Okay, so while we still have time, let's talk a little bit about Open Web Sandbox and the Marmot Foundation. These other two things that you're involved in. Sandbox, I think I know a fair amount about, but maybe just to talk about where it's going, kind of from a learning experience process, like what you're learning as it's evolving, because I feel kind of lucky in the sense that Sophia and Vasilia are taking care of that. Because I think back in the day when we launched Sandbox, Cameron came to us and he was like, as this thing grows, you're gonna have to figure out KYC. You're gonna have to figure out all this stuff.
Oh yeah,
you're gonna have to, do all this. And at the time, I was just like, oh God, I don't want to think about any of this.
Please don't.
I'm just gonna launch it and then see what happens. And then we launched it, and now that I think Sophia and Vasilia are kind of taking it over and growing it, they're the ones who have to go through all of these slightly troubling things that at the beginning I was like, oh Jesus. But yeah, if you want to just talk a little bit about how that's going, what's the kind of future trajectory and what your role is with that might be helpful.
For sure. So, and yes, shout out, of course, to Sophia and Vasilia, who are really, and the team has been growing, which is really awesome. There's, graphic design support and assistance, event assistance, and the council itself is also reflecting that. We've also launched a regional moderator initiative, so that looking at who makes up the sandbox itself, this entity where you can learn, you can play, you can earn. It's task-based community efforts where you have posted a set on a monthly basis, a list of rolling rewards and opportunities that over the course of the month, individuals can avail themselves of based on different activities listed there. There's also a lot of project support that's been really key now and will continue to be to what the Open Web Sandbox is aiming to do, because it's an incubation space, it's a supporting space. And so it's really vital to connect all of the different sandboxers and potential individual contributors in the community, because it's open, anyone can join, and with the different projects and guilds who are looking for some kind of expertise or support by way of graphic design work, by way of user testing, perhaps. So a lot of that's being built out right now. And actually, this is really fitting because in the next week or so, the next roadmap for the next 6 months is going to be presented internally to the NEAR Foundation, and then will also be posted publicly for comment from the broader community, because there is this desire to look at what is to come. And this is where my role gets to come in, because as someone who's there in a supportive advisory capacity, just to help be that bridge between NEAR Foundation, the community team, and then the Open Web Sandbox, because of our very clear emphasis on onboarding. And the Open Web Sandbox is a space where individual contributors find themselves perhaps very early on in their time in their community. It's really key to ensure that that support's there from the beginning and everyone's aligned on, the messaging, the ways in which we can all support and help one another, the data behind it all. So seeing the conversations now of what makes perhaps that guild, because it is a guild as well, a bit more like formalized by way of, you mentioned the KYC, legal compliance. These are things that we're all thinking about and trying to evolve. So I don't want to spoil the surprise, but it is something that, in terms of how I've been trying to help and support, a lot of it's just more perhaps on the community engagement side and the strategy side. So setting up the monthly party structure, trying to assist with potential content for the weekly AMAs, and then sort of just like checking in and seeing how else NEAR Foundation and the community team can support. So that's one way in which like the Open Web Sandbox is able to be a part of my life. I'm just generally a fan too. We were catching some of the original like community calls from way back when on YouTube, just to, I don't know, Sophia sent it to me and it was so funny and lovely to be like, oh man, back then when the idea was just like a sparkle in your eye, how far it's come.
That was an interesting
where
one.
It'll go.
And with
Marvin
time.
J. Foundation
with Marvin J. Foundation,
similar too.
I'm interested actually, because I don't actually know the full scope of the Marvin J. Foundation.
Sure.
I know Chloe and the stuff that she's done is very well spoken of. And then also, apparently she's like a Pixel Pet Pro or something on that front as well.
She
like
is
an incredible gamer.
Yeah.
So that's all I know though. So in terms of the Marvin J. Foundation and what it does, if you want to kind of
that's almost like all you need to know. I feel like that's sufficient, everyone, but no, just kidding. So the Marvin J. Foundation was founded by Chloe, and I was invited to be a part of it based on the fact that it has this really strong focus on supporting creatives, spreading love and positivity, and finding ways to leverage Web3 technology in order to support community. It started, the origins were in Antigua, like very physically, and trying to find ways for artists, creatives, different groups to be able to have the means to support themselves, like very basically financial means, like being able to help set up access and familiarity with different DeFi tools, minting NFTs at that level. And it's kind of grown now to the point where there's a Marma J Chan like mascot identity. And now there's this drawn in your own style challenge that has been getting incredible global response. And some of these creative interpretations are just incredible. And so it's trying to find ways to gather more community involvement. But in terms of the future plans, like I'll leave it more to Chloe to discuss and to Bianca, the creative director. But ultimately, maybe I can use this moment to show the fact that there is going to be a birthday party for Marma J Chan. I think we're looking at December 19th, and the folks over at Near Hub are helping us build out a space specifically for that. So it's a lot of trying to support built on Near projects, general near projects, whether they're coming over from other protocols or other platforms, and then artists and creatives and anyone who's interested in learning and growing together more positively. Like it's a good vibe. It's a good space. So yeah, I'll leave the rest for Chloe, and also bring up, if I can, just another way in which positivity and goodness, I'm trying to bring that in. Sounds like I'm such a hippie, and I kind of am. But also at the moment we have the Community Choice Awards on, and there's about a week left until we close that. It closes on November 26th at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. So that's community.astrodao.com. If you want to get involved, there's 12 different categories, 8 for individual awards like favorite meme, favorite 2D NFT, and then there's 4 group awards like favorite DAO or favorite guild. And you can, through the Astro, thank you. Oh, sharing screen. Perfect. Yes. Through the Astro DAO polling functionality, you can join the community DAO and propose and vote on your favorites across all these different categories. And we're really hoping that this is a great way not only to celebrate what this whole first year of near on mainnet could be, and all of the awesome things that have occurred, but then also just giving everyone a chance to maybe catch up or see projects that they didn't know about yet, or were like hilarious, wonderful moments captured by Twitter or a meme or something that they missed out on. And there can be awesome prizes. We scrolled past it there, but like near misfits, you could win. Like yes, part of the first fleet, this NFT avatar. I don't know if AVB was on the other day, right? Yesterday?
Yeah, we'll bring him on.
I hope you plugged this. Yes. And then there's also for the group categories, the group award winners, they will get some really awesome swag from Swagger DAO. So it's a community effort putting this together, but then also hopefully a way in which we're celebrating near community and all those contributions, and an uplifting and positive way to sort of close out the calendar year.
Really cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for jumping on, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me.
Bring yourself on and perhaps even Chloe next time, just to talk about what you guys are up to and where you see the community developing. I think it's always a good reminder of just how multifaceted crypto is, right? And so you can have your degen sharks, and you can have your crazy yield farmers on the one hand, and now you have community builders and people interested in building culture, and people working with the early stage people who are just learning about the creator economy. So keep up the great work that you guys are doing at the Near Foundation, and hopefully we'll see you on sometime soon in the future.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And this has been lovely. Cheers to the whole team. And I'm going to keep watching Rise and Grind. I mean, I'm such a fan. So talk to everyone soon.
Sounds great. We'll see you, Rebecca.
What were you going to say there, though, before we transition?
Oh, I was just going to talk about how like the Rise and Grind move, it's like low key, like we're trying to get this thing up and running now, so that in like 2 to 3 months, it's going to be like blowing the hell up because of where Near is and because of where like the place is. So this is just like the ugly early days of how all this stuff happens. But I'm very confident with these like VC checks and with other stuff that like we're in the right position, and it's just a matter of like being ready to go when the time comes. So yeah, it'll be fun to see how Rise and Grind evolves over time, and it's kind of like one of many things that the Ants team is doing now. But I think as the ecosystem gets going, this is going to be a really important conduit to talk about stuff. So
for sure. And I'll be so honored to say that, the early days. I was a guest. I was part of that,
Back in. Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Okay. Well, take care. We'll have we'll be in touch. So, yep. See ya.